back to my channel. For those of us who are my regular subscribers, thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for staying with me through this yo-yoing of content on this channel. And also, of course, I've been MIA for some time. I had a bad laptop and I had a bad phone, so there was no way filming could commence. And if you are just coming across this channel for the very first time, I am that original Niger chick, one and only. I make lifestyle, straight talking videos and any other thing that interests me pretty much, including food recipes, reviews, hauls, and lately I've added crime stories to the list. So right now I'll be telling you a story, as you've seen on the title already. It's a story about David Thabo Simelane. If you're regular on this channel, you know I butcher names. So for my Swazilanders, please sorry if I butcher any of the names I may call here. This is a story. I have not written it down. I've just read it, and I'm going to tell it to you as I have read it, as I have researched it. Now, let's go. Enough of the talking. Now, if you see me looking like shit, it's because I'm going to be doing my skincare and my makeup in front of you. Now, today I'm going for a very light, fresh look, as it is 7 o'clock right now, and I'll be heading out the door for errands, so I'm not going to do anything heavy. Now, let's go. Too much talk, right? I get it. I get that on my channel. A lot of people say I talk too much. Now, Swaziland, in case you don't know, is a southern African country. I think the population is about 1,200,000 people. As at 2008. A census was carried out, and it was 1.13 something, but I guess there should not be more than 1.3 or 1.2 million. It's pretty much small country compared to my country Nigeria, which is over 200 million people. Now, as Swazilanders, like most African countries, they also practice spiritism. They believe in the spirit of the ancestors. They visit native doctors. Now, this is very, very significant to this story. Some of the things I'll be saying will be around the belief of Swazilanders as compared to this case. Now, there was a lady called Samantha. Now, Samantha was a 26-year-old young graduate who just graduated from the huge university in Swaziland there. I think it's the University of Swaziland. And she studied law. Her hopes were to actually finish her education there and go to the city capital, Mbabane, to look for a job. She wanted to go look for a job in a high court. Now, the day she was going to look for her job, she told her mom, she's from a rural area, she's not a city girl. So she told her mom she was actually going to the city to look for a job. When she got to a bus stop leading to where she was to the high court, she met a man, and this man promised to get her a job in a factory, in a chemical factory, and the pay was actually very, very good compared to compared to all the wages people earn in Swaziland. Now, Swaziland, women really don't work. Women do mostly domestic work and they do petty trades, but the real breadwinners are the men. So it's quite a patriarchal country, and women are not given priority. I don't know if it has changed now, because this happened, like, let's say 16 years ago or 20 years ago, 2001, 2000. This was when this event took place. So as at 20 years ago, women were not given rights, so it was a huge opportunity for her to be able to get the job at that chemical company that was paying well. I think at that time the equivalent of the pay was like $500. That was what they offered. That was what he said they were going to pay her. So yeah, on hearing that information, she ran home to her mom, and she told her mom that she was going to meet a man in town who was going to take her to a factory where she will have to work for a huge amount of money. And she left for the city, and that was the last seen of her. She wasn't seen again. The mother went to the police and made a police report. As of that time this was happening, there was another woman who was also missing with her 1-year-old daughter called Fikile. Now the story had it that the lady lived with her husband on weekdays, and no, the lady lived with her husband on weekends. Then on weekdays she goes to her in-laws to stay. So it was said that the husband worked in a factory type situation and he had to go to work, during the week. So but he stays behind in the weekend. So the wife and the 1-year-old daughter, comes during the weekend to see him. So at that particular weekend they had a problem. He and his wife had a problem, and she left quite late at night to her. She left quite late at night to her in-laws' place, and that was the last seen of her. Now, it so happened that the next morning, noticed that his wife and daughter, 1-year-old daughter, didn't arrive his parents' place. So he went to the police to, make an investigation. Went to the police to report his wife missing. After he reported his wife missing, he went to diviners, sorcerers, to see if the wife was alive. So they did all their conjuring in the mirror. The African poured schnapp. I don't know if they use schnapps in Swaziland. Gave them kola nuts. Okay, I'm just this is what a typical Nigerian native doctor will do. Kola nut, alcohol drink. So they checked for the wife. She didn't appear on the mirror that she was projected to. So the man now understood that she was dead. So now on April 20th, 2001, a worker a herder, someone who takes care of cows and trains cows, had one of his cows missing. So they went to a nearby farm called Eagle's Nest Farm in Malkens in Swaziland, and he went into the forest to look for his cows. When he got there, he found decomposing bodies of two women and a child. So he ran out, alerted the police. Then the police came with their team of investigators. The police came with their team of investigators and combed the whole area. So the area was combed and they found over 20 decomposing bodies. These bodies have been badly decomposed, indicating that these bodies have been there for quite a long while. So, and among those bodies were 4 children and 20 women, which of course they didn't identify immediately. They put up a nationwide broadcast that if people had family members missing from their household, that they have found like a den of bodies, of badly decomposed bodies of women and children. So a lot of people came to identify the bodies, and amongst these people were, Mabel. Mabel is the mother of the 26-year-old Samantha, who went missing following the man that, promised her a job. Then Simon is the husband of the woman and her child who left for her in-laws' place and didn't return or didn't get there. So on getting there, Simon identified his wife and his 1-year-old daughter. Now the wife's body was tied behind her back and there was a slit on her throat. Then the child, she had a hand cut off, one of the hands cut off. So yeah, they found that the woman has been, this word over here, which I would say because of YouTube censorship. So yeah, but nothing happened to the child except that her hands were cut off. So all these incidents, the bodies, and they were led to a nationwide cry out. Like the nationwide cry out, the government was telling everyone to please stay in their homes. They put a curfew and they told everyone that there's a killer let loose in the city. A killer was around, that people should be wary. So they put like a curfew for 6 o'clock every day. Now, because of the magnitude of these killings and the magnitude of investigation that was going to be done, Swazilanders enlisted the help of Southern African police. So the Southern African police came in with their forensic team, people who do DNA profiling, people who do killer profiling, and all that investigation stuff. So, but when the South African police people arrived at Swaziland, they found that the poor system of Swaziland, and they found that it was so poor that anyone could actually get away with crime. It wasn't well organized. They weren't doing a lot of investigation. The samples were poorly placed. It was a lot of reform that needed to be done in Swaziland by the Southern African investigation team. It was a lot. So they commenced work. Now they did profiling, and a lot of names came on board, but of course they didn't have any DNA data. But a breakthrough came in 2 weeks later when a man recognized David. Dave recognized David in a restaurant. Now, it was said that David went with his wife to look for a job for her, and since then he hadn't seen the wife. But the man hasn't reported the case yet because that happened over 1 week ago. So he was thinking he was going to still find his wife, but he didn't report it to the police. However, when he saw David, and of course with the news flying around, he hailed David and asked David to provide his wife, that he hasn't seen the wife since David left with his wife. Now, David has gone with so many names, which I do not want to waste my time calling, because if I call those names now, you can go to the article, themedium.com, and you will see the full story. Now, my story, a lot of them came from themedium.com. Yeah, so if you go to the article, I'll list it down below for you to go read the full story. Now, when he held David and told them, and took David to the police station, and actually told the people in the station over there that David went with his wife for a job interview, and after that she didn't show up. Now, people didn't believe the man because David didn't look like someone who women will follow. He looked nothing like what the police had profiled the killer to be. The police had profiled the killer to be someone handsome, someone probably very educated, someone with charisma, someone that people would generally fall behind. But the man that was brought to the station was, I don't like to say people are ugly, but the Swazilandan said it was nothing to write home about. He couldn't speak proper English. He wasn't well dressed. He was like really tattered, and he acted like someone who was homeless or someone whose head was not totally, screwed on. So when the police questioned him, he immediately confessed and said yes, he remember the man and remember his wife, that his wife was among those people dead, but at a different location. He just cracked immediately. The police really didn't do much. So the police were shocked and they told him, okay, tell us, because they didn't believe him at first. They said, tell us, give us some details that only a killer would know. So he gave them some details. He told them how he strangled the lady, Linda Kule and Fikile, how he killed Samantha with an axe on her head, how he her. So yeah, he told them, and the police were shocked to find out that he knew so much. So this time he took the man to where he buried his wife, and that was a different location. So when he took them there, the police now dug up a grave, and the man identified that was his wife. Now they now held David under custody and asked him questions upon questions, and he was cooperative. Now let's have a brief history about David. Now David was, as at the time he was caught, he was about 43 years old, but he started the life of crime. The official records were at 19. But in the article I read, there was nothing said about his parents, but he grew up with an aunt, And this aunt's family, they were a family of herders. They were mainly cattle rearers and crop producers. So that was how he got the money for his fees in school. But at some point, business wasn't doing great, so he had to drop out. He dropped out at grade 10 in Nigeria. I think grade 10 should be SS2 or SS3. So that was when he dropped out. But the auntie described him as a very brilliant child because he started school later than the rest of his classmates, but he surpassed them. So, but she also said that he was a restless child. At a point in his life, he lived a nomadic lifestyle. Like he would go out of the house for days. He would go out and he would steal people's crops on the farm. He would go to people's farm and steal people's chickens. Or sometimes he goes and eats wild animals. You know, he was described as restless. But at age 19, he actually went to jail for stabbing his girlfriend. She didn't die actually, but he stabbed her and he got a 15-month sentence in jail for that. Then after that, he started going to the police station frequently. One of them was for assault and robbery of a woman. He collected her bag and he took some money in her bag. He was arrested for that. He served some time. But one that he went to jail for a long time, being let's say 5 years. He went to jail for 5 years for that one. Was he was, according to him, he said he was accused, that the lady accused him of stealing her money and disward her, but he didn't do it. So when after he spent his 5 years in prison, he started a revenge mission. That is his story, but this story has a lot of clause in it, man. So when he came out from jail, he went on a serious rampage because he was accused and he served time for a crime he didn't commit, apparently. But yeah, that's a brief history about him. However, that is no justification for all the crimes, because even if he was, accused falsely, as he said, what was his justification for killing kids? Because if he killed 4 children, 4 kids were also his victim. So you could argue that, okay, the children were just a case of being at the wrong place at the wrong time. However, the women he killed were women of low society, like women who were struggling to get a job, women who were poor and impoverished. Like there was a case of him befriending a girl, and in the course of befriending the girl and promising to marry her, he took 4 of her cousins to the city and murdered them. What was the reason for that? He murdered them. He was in a disguise that he had connections in the city and he had friends in the city, so he was going to be able to get jobs for her cousins. But after some time, each time they go to the city, she doesn't hear from them anymore. She kept on asking him, how are my cousins? I want this to dry. He would tell them that they are working really far. He would tell her that these people are working really far, that it would take some time for them to come visit her, not knowing that he has killed some of them. He had, sexually assaulted some of them and had killed them off. That was his confession. The lady in question was the one, after everything, all the trials, she came to court and she sealed the deal and he was punished. But the story is still long. Now, this story dragged on because they couldn't believe how a man who is of that caliber, not so intelligent, could carry out such hideous crime without help. Because he was saying that he did all that himself. Now, he was saying he killed 36 people, but the police traced about 28 people to him. But he was still insisting he was 36. So, but the police knew he had help because some of them were buried in really, really good graves. Some of the women were huge. Look at the size of him and the woman. And the way they were actually murdered, it was like he had help. But he was saying that he did all these things himself. So this case took long. They had to call like a psychiatric evaluator, someone who to evaluate him if he was sound, and she reported that he was sound, that he knew what he was saying. So this case dragged on and dragged on because they were also looking for substantial evidence. Some of the bodies were so decomposed to the extent that they could not be identified. So the police were looking for a lot of evidences to make sure that their case is really valid for a sentencing. Now this carried on for so long. Now something significant happened during the time of awaiting trial and gathering evidences. A lot of the people involved in the case started dying. His lawyer, his first lawyer died. The state lawyer, the lawyer for the state, died. Some of the victims' parents died. Simon died. The guy who lost his wife and his daughter died. A lot of people died in the case. A lot of people died in the case. So people were speculating that he was involved in ritual killing. He had, this is Africa. They believe in traditional, ancestors and gods and all that, shenanigans there. So a lot of people, some people were not taking the case. It was hard for people to find another state lawyer, to prosecute him, because people were scared that they were going to die. And of a truth, people were dying. But it came to the knowledge that after some time, people started investigating this death as to why people were dying. If they were being poisoned, some people said they were being poisoned, some people said they were being killed by the gods David served. Since according to them, he's a traditionalist, but he later turned to a pastor in prison. But after all said and done, it turned out that people were dying of HIV. Swaziland was one country really hit with the HIV pandemic at that time. 1 in 3 people had HIV, and people were dying. So it was not, and people were dying. So it was not as a result of the man being fetish. In fact, during his time in prison, he turned Christian and was preaching the Bible. But let's move forward with the story. So the judge then, the trial started after like 5-6 years. It took up to 10 years for him to be properly sentenced. So the judge sentenced him to death by hanging. Now that would be like the second capital punishment in Swaziland at that time, because I don't think they had sentenced people to death at that time. I don't think so. Yeah. Now there's another significant story as well, that caused a lot of ruckus in court, because when they sentenced him, people were happy, women were jumping, and the judge was like, people should not be happy. This is a person dying here. People could not contain the joy they felt that he was sentenced to death by hanging. I didn't talk about so many people he killed, because if I start talking about their stories one after the other, I don't think we'll leave here today. This video will be like 50 to 60 minutes long, and I'm not planning to make a documentary. But if you want to read about the full story, go to themedium.com. I'll put the link down below. You see the full story. It takes about 30 minutes to finish reading the whole story because it's so long. But this man was one of the worst prolific killers. And also, I forgot to tell you guys that after questioning, before he was sentenced, he actually retracted his story. He said that he had help, and the help he mentioned were 2 prominent people, one a politician and one a police chief. He said he helped them to purchase bodies for rituals, for top politicians in the country. That personally, I believe, because I've seen a similar situation here in Nigeria. I've heard of a similar. I've read about a similar situation like 10 years, 20 years ago, where politicians were using people for rituals for them to win, political appointment. And I do not doubt that it's the case as well in Swaziland, because from what I told you earlier, they are quite into the ritualistic ancestors thing. Although a lot of them are Christians, but they are mostly traditional practicing people. So yeah, I think so. So, but the police then, told him they didn't buy the story, because the night before he retracted the statement, there was a mention of these two people on TV, which they knew he watched. So I guess, according to them, they said he just had ideas, just to, I don't know why he did that, why he suddenly just recanted his story. But hey, I believe that story. I don't believe he could do that alone. But hey, my brother said that some people are so evil that sometimes the magnitude of crime they carry out, you think that it's been carried out by a multitude of people, but it's just them. Yeah. So guys, go and read the full story. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye bye.